Hi, I'm Dr. Katie McCullough, and I'm joined here with Harry Deng, one of the recipients of the 2019 WK-LAM Awards for the Best Student Works in University or College in British Columbia for his essay, Vancouver's Chinatown, Literary Mappings of Seclusion. Harry was my student in the history of British Columbia, an upper division tutorial taught at Simon Fraser University in the fall of 2019. The course was taught as the cultural history of BC, covering the history of contact and conflict between the peoples who lived and settled in what is now British Columbia. I felt it was important in the course that students engage directly with primary source material available in BC's rich archives to really get stuck in doing the work of historians, and that this would form the basis of their final research assignments. This was also important as students would be given an opportunity to write something new and be a part of a community of scholars writing the history of British Columbia. Harry did an excellent job of achieving this goal, and I'm delighted to be able to share our conversation with you all today. So congratulations, Harry.
Thanks.
How does it feel?
Good, I guess. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of the more interesting projects I've done in the 4 years at SFU. And yeah, this is my first opportunity to actually go down to an archive, work with archival material. Actually went to Victoria as a day trip with a friend. So it's kind of interesting to go to the provincial archive. So yeah, it was definitely a really interesting experience working on this, and it's a good introduction to actually doing historical research, which is good.
Yeah, well, that was my hope and my intention for you guys, was to be historians, because, you know, why not, with all these rich archives that we have in British Columbia, you know, right on our doorstep. So that was really satisfying to see all of you achieve that. So let us begin really with what inspired you to begin this project.
Right. So I think it was my second year. I read this article. I forgot the author's name, but it was essentially based around the same idea of exploring the colonial contact zone in Victoria's Chinatown, and sort of challenges, you know, traditional ideas of the interactions between the Chinese immigrants in the late 19th century and early 20th century with white settlers. And I've always found that piece interesting, and it's one of the articles that it's sort of that I won't forget. It was, you know, it was really, it really made an impression on me, I guess. So then with this, I want to do the same thing. It's like, what was Vancouver's Chinatown, my own backyard, like back then? What was the colonial contact zone like? So yeah, I thought this was a great opportunity to do that. And, you know, like you said, we have all these rich resources in our backyard, and it was just a great opportunity to explore that idea. And yeah, it was good. It's good fun.
Can you tell us a bit more about what you discovered in the archive that shaped your project?
Right. So it was not really, I didn't really know what I was looking for in the archives. It was, I found inspiration about what I should be looking for with the original article that I read. But we, you know, obviously we didn't have the same resources, not the same, it wasn't in the same archive. So it was kind of a lot of sort of, let's see what they have in the archives, and then just read about all these different documents. So the essay is really just a collection of interesting sources that I thought tied together really well, and sort of told a story of sort of the contact zone in Vancouver. So, you know, one of the sources that I found, not I didn't find, but it was so. One of the parts of the essay will talk about sort of challenging, sort of what we call, I guess, geographies of power, right? And it was there was a source found in Renisa Mawani's book that talked about the Kincliffe Church in Kincliffe, BC, and it sort of demonstrates the sort of changing colonial lexicon in relation to the different groups found in BC at this time. And so within this, so the story is, so they're opening a church in Kincliffe, a new church. So there was this celebration, and you had, this celebration that was very much like that almost looked like some sort of part of England, a celebration in England somewhere. But then you had these indigenous people who outnumbered white settlers greatly in northern BC, but you had also these indigenous people that were dressed like quote unquote Chinamen that were dancing around, right? So then I think that sort of shows the changing geographies of power within BC, because you have, you have this relationship between the white settlers and the indigenous people that was quite, it was quite a long-lasting relationship, right? But with the arrival of the Chinese, we sort of had this, how do we fit the Chinese within this colonial lexicon, right? So then what we see is a lot of the anxieties that were targeted towards indigenous people started to shift towards the Chinese, right? So like sexual, what I focused on a lot of my essay is this idea of sexuality and the governance of women's bodies, right? And another source I found was obviously the list of body house owners in BC, and they were mostly pretty much all white people and mostly females that owned these places. But obviously there was idea of this fear of Chinese sexual profligacy in Chinatown. So so I also found a couple of police reports. So it was a number of different sources that I found that sort of tied into this story of anxieties that was prevailing at this time.
Yeah, that's really interesting what you talk about, how indigenous people, kind of being urged to perform this kind of Chinese identity, or at least how the white British settlers saw it. But there's a kind of reverse of that over time, I'm assuming. And did you see any changes in anything and maybe you didn't, because you weren't looking for that kind of thing, or you weren't looking later on, but how had things changed by the end of the period you were looking at?
How things regarding this?
I guess that, as you say, these kind of images being kind of pushed onto, or the creation of the colonial lexicon, is that still there in sort of the mid 20th century that you were looking at?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the sources that I found was an article in Maclean's magazines that came out in 1949. It was, I believe it's a couple from somewhere in the States, can't remember, like Oregon or something like that. They were honeymooning in Vancouver, and they had this opportunity to go to Chinatown with a guide. And but tagging along was actually a woman from Vancouver. She was a tourist going into Vancouver's Chinatown. And they were surprised that, the title of the articles, what no opium dens, right? Like they were surprised that the image of Chinatowns that they had in their minds, it didn't reflect reality. Yeah. Right. And this was right. So this is what I was trying to challenge. And even today, Vancouver Chinatown, it's still it's not so much. It's not as obvious, it's not as overt as obviously in the 1940s or even earlier, but there are still certain ideas that still carried over, right? And that's historiography obviously informs both legal and policymaking processes,
Mm-hmm.
and the how we see places like Chinatown. It affects stuff like gentrification. Why are we gentrifying these spaces? What do these spaces represent to different people, right? So I think ideas that were formed during the colonial era, the lexicon, it carries over today, but it's more insidious in a way. It's not as overt, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was going to ask you that question about what you felt about, or what you had thought about, the gentrification process that is moving apace in Eastern Vancouver, and yeah, and Chinatown is right there, and almost those kind of walls are closing in again, or what kind of changes will we see moving forward, and how the community will react,
Right.
and that sort of stuff. Yeah. And would you take this further? I mean, you're heading on to other things in the fall, not history, but would you research this further and expand out into other parts of Canada, or have you thought about this kind of research in broader context?
Yes, definitely. So obviously going to getting a master's degree, pursuing a master's degree, at least. I'm not sure getting, but one of the areas that I'm really interested in is exploring sort of civil society and essentially ideas of belonging. Right. So I think looking at history and looking at historical processes, how do we see different people, different localities, people within these localities, obviously plays a role in informing what and who belongs. And another thing, so civil, and I guess another thing is, the civil society, you have different layers of authority. How do people interact with different, maybe non-legitimate, can't say non-legitimate, but non-state sources of authority, and how do these authorities arise? And I think history and historiography informs these things, these ideas, right? So, I was involved in a civil society organization that its sort of main goal was trying to get new immigrants, especially Chinese immigrants, involved in the political process, right? So, these sources of power, how do you incorporate Chinese immigrants into the Canadian political system, right? And how did these groups form in the first place? Obviously, it's formed by the history and the process of making, what is a Chinese immigrant, right? Stuff like that. So it's, research like this, I think, is definitely very important in informing these things.
So history was your major at Simon Fraser University. Did you approach your undergraduate degree thinking I'm going to do history, or was that something that came a bit later?
No, that came halfway through my studies. I started out as international studies major, but halfway I was like history, because you sort of do a lot of the same courses in both majors. So that's like I pretty much done equal IS and history. So I think I'm gonna do history, and that became a major, and IS became a minor.
I guess I just wanted to talk about, how you came to history, and those kinds of things are important to me as a historian, and that kind of thing, and the kind of work that you've been doing, your research you did in your undergrad and that you will take forward into your master's at Waterloo, really demonstrates the importance of history for understanding the present, which is excellent. It's wonderful to see a student really flourish in that way as you have. But do you have any any advice for other undergraduate students who may want to undertake research in archives as part of their undergraduate work? what kind of advice would you have for them?
Advice to uh, don't look for anything specific because you'll never find it. That's one thing I found with 2 research projects I did.
Hmm.
Or just, I mean, it's part of the fun, I guess, of just not knowing and just see what comes out of it. So yeah, and yeah, and there is a bit of detective work associated with archival work. It's just like sometimes they're not organized, so sometimes you have to look for parts of something that maybe not in the same archive, right? And sometimes you got to stitch together pieces to make a full picture, and sometimes you can't even do that. So I mean, it's part of the fun of not knowing and sort of winging it, I guess. It's definitely not something. Well, at least I don't think it's something you can go in with a structured approach. No. Yeah, I guess that would be one thing I learned.
Yeah, it's the fun of discovery.
Yeah.
That all of us historians do. Yeah, we go in with a plan, but more often than not, it doesn't work out that way.
No.
And that's the fun of it, isn't it?
Yeah. I went in with this with ideas of what sources I want. Ended up with completely different sources, and yeah, worked out well, I guess.
It worked out very well, as far as I can tell. So you went to the BC Archives in Victoria. Where else did you do your research?
No, that's it. The municipal and provincial archives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent places to go, for sure. So would you have any advice just broadly for any students who are doing BC history, or any other thoughts that you might have on this kind of research?
Obviously take courses with Katie McCullough. Advice, probably, I guess, I don't know. I don't really have much advice. Just, again, use the resources, I guess.
Yeah.
One thing I wish I would have known earlier was just go to the archives.
Yeah.
You'll never know what you find. And stuff you see may help you later on in your academic career. And it really teaches you how to be a historian. So it doesn't matter if you, I guess, have a research project in mind or not. It's sort of like going to a museum, really. It's what it is. It's a museum, but with photos and letters and reports. Use the archives. Go explore them.
But I want to take this opportunity to thank Harry for taking time today to speak with us about his excellent project on Chinatown in the colonial period. And we wish him all the best in his future endeavors. So thank you very much again, Harry.
Thank you.